Kebatu was deported to his home country of Ethiopia last night, 4 days after officers at Chelmsford prison released him in error instead of sending him to an immigration centre. Kebatu spent 2 days at large before being arrested in North London on Sunday morning. He was also repeatedly questioned on his appalling crimes, but Sky News has chosen not to broadcast the denials of a convicted sex offender in this interview. Our national correspondent Tom Parmenter has our first report tonight.
As he climbed up the aircraft steps at Heathrow, convicted sex offender Hadush Kebatu was being kicked out of Britain. Sky News understands he'd just been paid £500 of government money, a payment the Home Office removals team made to speed up his deportation. When he landed in Ethiopia, he agreed to speak to Sky News. We asked him what happened when prison staff released him by mistake last Friday. For hours, he wandered around outside Chelmsford prison, asking people where he should go.
Who can responsible for me? Where is Home Office? Where is the immigrant? I will tell them, but also all of the experts they are ignored me. And also, the time it should be fast. I am homeless. I am not eating. At that time, they are passed. Where is the station? Where is the train station? Someone helped me. I will take the ticket, £18.
On Saturday, we spoke exclusively to a delivery driver who witnessed what happened at the prison and spoke to Kebatu.
He walked out of the airlock. He then kept returning back to the airlock and basically saying to the officers there, where am I going? What am I doing? They basically were almost sending him away. It's like, go. You've been released, you go.
And so began a 48-hour manhunt stretching across London for a man convicted of sex offences against a 14-year-old girl, just days after he'd arrived on a small boat across the Channel. A case that prompted widespread protests. On Friday evening, after his release, still in his grey prison tracksuit, he was in a library in Dalston, East London. The following day, Kebatu claims he tried to hand himself in.
On the morning, Saturday, I get a police. Look here. Please, I am wanted man. I arrested. I will give you my hand. Please help him. Where is police station? He ignored me. He drive. But also, I am not unknown. The police station, where is the place? I am not Google it. But also, I get the police. I will give you my hand. Please help me. Where is the police station? Take me. My name is Hadush Kebatu. I am national of Ethiopia. Please, I want the mistake release from Chelmsford prison. Please help me.
He was eventually arrested after a member of the public spotted him in Finsbury Park, North London, the next day, on Sunday morning. Responding to Kebatu's claims, the Metropolitan Police told Sky News the Met is not aware of any evidence to support the claims that Kebatu approached officers on Saturday morning. The actions of officers who responded to the sighting of him on Sunday morning show how seriously they were taking the manhunt. Kebatu's actions on the morning of his arrest were more like those of someone trying to avoid officers, not trying to hand himself in. They are two differing accounts within this deeply embarrassing episode for the government. On Sunday, the Deputy Prime Minister and Justice Secretary David Lammy thanked the police officers who had arrested him. The Ministry of Justice has reiterated that it welcomes the deportation and have started a full investigation into what happened. Sky News has chosen not to broadcast other parts of Kebatu's interview. He's been removed from the country as a convicted sex offender. How the authorities managed that process is under huge scrutiny. Tom Parmenter, Sky News.
The first ever compensation scheme has been launched for victims of the Post Office capture scandal. Capture software came before the now infamous Horizon system and was used in branches between 1992 and 2000, creating shortfalls in accounts. It led to hundreds of wrongful theft convictions. The government said anyone affected can now apply for redress. Those found to be eligible could receive payments of up to £300,000. Sky's Adele Robinson reports.
Official recognition that an injustice was done.
More than 3 decades since lives were destroyed in the Capture IT scandal.
Ended up being bankrupt, criminal record. We lost everything we possessed.
And the first official redress scheme for post office victims is launched.
I hope they will see that this scheme treats them with a bit more dignity and a bit more urgency.
But it hasn't landed well. Many victims say it's unfair compared to Horizon compensation schemes.
It's a 2-tier system, one law for the Horizon victims, totally different law for us Capture victims, and that's not really fair.
Steve Marston critical of how it will award payments between £10,000 and £300,000, with only exceptional cases paid more.
I want to see it in black and white, what they consider exceptional circumstances, rather than just a vague statement to that effect.
Postmasters used Capture software which caused accounting shortfalls in their branches in the 90s before the Horizon scandal. They want equality with all victims.
The banding seems fairly arbitrary, and it doesn't seem to reflect the full scope of what some people will have suffered.
Chris's mum Liz went to jail. His dad Bill ran the post office. Both are now gone. But Chris can apply to the redress scheme, along with the first 150 victims testing it out.
I'd hate us to get to the point where this scheme's come out and we go through these 150 cases and then it's further developed and half the people it would apply to are gone. We will lose people before, they can see justice. And I think that's a terrible tragedy.
In an exclusive interview with Sky News, the Post Office Minister says he does understand why trust is so low. Why should victims trust this process that's been put into place after seeing the Horizon schemes dogged by delays and red tape?
Well, postmasters are right to have low levels of trust in the state because they've been treated appallingly by the state. But what we've done with this scheme is to try to learn some of those lessons for where previous compensation schemes for postmasters didn't work. So we're collecting more evidence from the beginning to try to speed things up.
Can you personally guarantee speedy redress then for the Capture victims?
Absolutely, that's what we are doing today, is to make sure that we have a scheme that gives people redress as quickly as possible.
While the money set aside for victims is uncapped, those with convictions can't yet apply. The real test now for government is whether redress comes swiftly and fairly for all. Adele Robinson, Sky News.
In other news today, a migrant who arrived in the UK on a small boat has been jailed for life for murdering a man in a bank in Derby. We can get more details on this now. Sky's Molly Malone is across this story, and some distressing detail coming up, Molly.
Yeah, that's right. This was an attack that happened in May in the middle of the afternoon inside a high street bank. A man called Habar Nur, who's a Somali national who'd paid to come over on a small boat to the UK last year, stabbed to death at random, the court heard, a customer inside the bank, a man called Javinder Jahal, with a kitchen knife. Now, he was just 37 years old, the victim, and leaves behind 3 young children. The stabbing, the court heard, was random and had come shortly after the attacker had been angrily complaining about how his asylum application had been refused. He'd applied for asylum but had it rejected and was in the middle of launching an appeal. But the court heard how Mr Nur had called a migrant charity less than 2 hours before he stabbed Mr Jahal to death, saying on that call that he planned to kill 500 people and suggesting that he wanted to target doctors, police or people working at the Home Office. So the judge today in court, Sean Smith Casey, told the defendant that the murder was, in his words, a brutal and callous act, saying it was a real-life horror film for everyone connected to Mr Jahal and everyone who had the misfortune of witnessing your wicked act. And he sentenced him to a minimum term of 25 years in jail.
Molly, thank you, Molly Malone, with that story for us. Thank you. An investigation has found hospital bosses missed 32 opportunities to take action against an NHS surgeon accused of botching children's operations. An independent report says Kuldeep Storr worked for years at Addenbrooke's Hospital in Cambridge, resulting in a prolonged risk to patients. The families of children who were treated by Storr say senior managers at the hospital should leave or be sacked. Our health correspondent Laura Bundock reports.
This is on the link. But they said... This is the moment they've waited for. But for families, it's a difficult read. The report into a suspended surgeon at Addenbrooke's Hospital in Cambridge finds missed opportunities and multiple failings that created a prolonged risk to patients.
she would have never operated back then on Tammy if the hospital had done something. It feels like they've rather protect their reputation and the face of the hospital and protect their job than put my child first.
Lynn's daughter Tammy was operated on by Kuldeep Store, a specialist children's orthopaedic consultant. But senior managers knew there were issues with her surgeries years ago. They were flagged in a 2016 report, but the hospital did nothing.
I feel angry, let down, sad. Me, my mum and my whole family knew there was something wrong, but not this bad.
Hundreds of patients, including Tammy, were put at risk. And this report highlights wider issues. Staff told investigators Addenbrook's global reputation creates a culture of cover-up.
I don't trust this report.
Lynn says senior leaders, including the chief executive, should go.
Either leave or be sacked, because I will not rest until him and the rest of the board have gone. Because I can't put my trust and faith in that hospital when it comes down to my child.
How is it possible, though, that that report was written, made those findings, made those recommendations, and yet senior managers here, your managers, didn't do anything about it?
But how concerns are raised and acted on is an area we've got to tackle. Another piece for us is how we support doctors when they join the hospital, but also how we manage them when things aren't going well. We have to tackle medical culture, and we have to handle investigations and how they're acted upon much better than we have done.
Families tell us they feel there has been no accountability. They want you to resign. Will you?
No, I will not. This is a question that a chief executive always considers when something goes wrong in the organisation. And as a chief executive, it's something I would discuss and have with my chairman, with the non-executive directors. What we have here is a very comprehensive plan that we need to lean into hard over the next 3, 6 and 12 months so we can deliver the changes that we need.
Ms. Storr isn't commenting but remains suspended. Families remain frustrated, questioning how can a culture change when those at the top stay the same. Laura Bundock, Sky News in Cambridge.
The morning after pill is now available for free in pharmacies across England. The move has been hailed by officials as the biggest change to sexual health services since the 1960s. Well, let's get more now on this with Janet Morrison, who is the Chief Executive at Community Pharmacy England. Good of you to join us this evening. Why is it so important that this change has been made?
I think it's incredibly important because women need to know that they've got access to a service. It's available in every high street, in nearly every pharmacy, and they don't have to worry about whether they might have to pay for it or any of those things. They just know it's available and there. And I think it's really important because it builds on the contraception services that also are available in a pharmacy, where they can also initiate oral contraception or do repeat prescriptions as well. So it can tie into not just the emergency at hand, but also potentially sorting that future security for the patient.
Yeah, access barriers removed. You mentioned the cost there. It can cost up to around £30. GPs as well, we know how hard it can be to get a GP appointment, and when there is a time frame to take any kind of medicine or pill, that can come into play. So talk me through the barriers that were there and the effect that that was having on women.
Yeah, so previously, in some areas it was free, but in a lot of areas you would have to pay. Might be £10, could be £30, as you said. You might have to go to the GP or try to find a sexual health clinic. So that all feels like a barrier, and that feels that people suddenly in a situation where they need to get this medication are hunting around and not knowing what they can do. So it makes a massive difference, I think, and it's really important that you're covering this and that patients know this is where I can go. And I think it builds on the fact that pharmacies have become increasingly important in the high street since the pandemic. People now realise they actually can give you health advice, but they can also provide you some clinical services that take the strain off GPs and trying to get through on the phone and get an appointment as well.
So what will the provision look like under this new change? If a woman goes in to a pharmacy, it's not like buying a packet of paracetamol, presumably. Talk me through the steps.
Well, normally you would expect to see either the pharmacist or a pharmacy technician. So if you talk to the counter staff, they'll forward you to that person, and that person will have a private consultation with you and sort you out and advise you on what to think about. And they can also then suggest that you think about alternative, longer-term, longer-acting contraception as well. So pharmacies are clinical professionals. They're very good at being sensitive to the needs of the patient and to giving that kind of consultation and advice. So it's just easy. And if you don't know if your pharmacy provides it, you can always look it up on the NHS website to see where it's available. But it pretty much is going to be on every single high street.
Yeah, and it's removing another barrier, isn't it? You don't have to just go to one place, your GP. There are numerous pharmacies available in every area, so it opens up more option for women. This is something you've been pushing for over the last few years. Can you talk to me about funding? How is this being funded?
It's funded through the NHS contract that we have nationally for community pharmacies. Pharmacies have been through a very difficult patch over many years in being underfunded. But we've gradually seen that the government has put a bit more money in. So they've introduced Pharmacy First, which is, again, a service that's available on every high street. You can go and get your minor ailment treated. We've also added the contraception service and a blood pressure service. So if there's more investment there, there's so much more we can do. And we've made it very clear to the government. There's a lot more services pharmacies could deliver if we can be sure that we've got the right foundations in terms of the funding. Pharmacies will do it. They've got the expertise to do it.
What more can be done in the area of women's health in terms of improving access and bringing pharmacies in to help women and girls? Because, as you said, you've been pushing for this for the last few years. It's been a topic of conversation amongst women for, a long time, for decades, easier access to the morning after pill. How else can women's health be improved through pharmacies? Because when we often talk about women's health, it seems like it's low down the list of priorities sometimes for the NHS in many women's opinions.
Yeah, I think a lot of women have thought that and felt that they haven't been at the top of the list. We already do, in some pharmacies, there are sexual health services available as well. But also there are services that have been trialled locally in terms of more support for menopause, for HRT. And there are other things that we could be doing in terms of giving long-acting contraception, implants and things like that as well. So we have actually said to the government, there's a lot more community pharmacy could do for women's health. And I think it'd be really good to see a message for women across the country that actually this has become more of a priority and that it's open access and available within the pharmacy near you.
And can pharmacies cope with the extra things that are being asked for them? Obviously, you're pushing for more services to go to pharmacies, and we know that the government, as part of their big plan, is to bring pharmacies more in line with the NHS to take pressure off other areas of the service. But, you referenced it there yourself a little earlier. Pharmacies in some areas are definitely struggling in terms of, they're cutting their hours and staffing and things like that. Can pharmacies cope with all of what you're talking about there, taking on more?
Well, you're right to say the next few months over the winter pressures, pharmacies will be super busy. Some are doing flu vaccinations, some are doing COVID vaccinations. We've got Pharmacy First, which will deal with lots of sore throat and UTIs and things like that. And actually, we're at a bit of a tipping point now. We've proved the case that pharmacies can provide these services. It fundamentally is about the NHS having the money and having the money to make sure that we've got the right kind of facilities, the rooms to consult people in, and also having the staffing there and being able to pay our bills. And that is going to need more investment. But the benefit of that is that we can do it more efficiently with the most efficient part of the NHS, and we can take pressure off GPs and other frontline NHS services. So the investment is worth it, but they have to put the money in. Otherwise, we are going to see more closures, and we will have proven that there are all these services that can be delivered from great pharmacy teams, but only if they can keep the lights on and doors open.
Janet, really good to talk to you tonight. That's Janet Morrison, Chief Executive of Community Pharmacy England. Thanks for your time. Still to come here on the UK Tonight. Police have named a man who was stabbed to death in West London as the attacker is charged with murder. Also ahead, a new study finds the post-lockdown generation is finding it tougher to attend school or college because of their mental health. And a £30 million bid by conservationists to purchase this Northumberland estate. Today, it has received support from Sir David Attenborough. We'll hear why the area is so important to the UK's wildlife.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling.
It's not his country, it's ours.
Sky News, the full story first, free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
A man has been charged with murder and attempted murder following a triple stabbing in West London on Monday. 22-year-old Safi Dawood will appear at Westminster Magistrates Court tomorrow. 49-year-old Wayne Broadhurst died at the scene and two others were seriously injured, including a 14-year-old boy. Our correspondent Alice Porter has more.
Well, 22-year-old Safi Dawood lived here on Midhurst Gardens in West London, and he's been charged with murder, 2 counts of attempted murder and 1 count of possession of an offensive weapon. Now, he was arrested on Monday after police were called to reports of a triple stabbing. Now, the emergency services were also called and paramedics tried to save the life of Wayne Broadhurst, who was a man who was just walking his dog in the street, and he was stabbed multiple times. Now, despite the best efforts of the paramedics, he died at the scene. Now, a 45-year-old man was also repeatedly stabbed, and he was being taken to hospital. He is still receiving treatment, and it's understood he had life-changing injuries. A 14-year-old boy was also stabbed, but he has been released from hospital. Now, we understand from the police that Wayne Broadhurst, the 49-year-old man who lost his life, did not know Safi Dawood. Now, what we do know is that Safi Dawood is a 22-year-old Afghan national. Now, he came to the UK via a lorry back in 2020. He was granted asylum 2 years later. Now, he has been charged with those multiple offences, and he will be appearing at Westminster Magistrates Court on Thursday.
An inquest has opened into the deaths of 2 men killed during a terror attack at a synagogue in Manchester. Melvin Kravitz and Adrian Dalby both died at the Heaton Park Hebrew Synagogue in Crumpsall at the start of October. Our North of England correspondent Katerina Vitozzi has the latest.
It was a relatively short opening into the inquest of the 2 men that died in that attack outside the Manchester Synagogue, which happened earlier this month. The inquests, which are being led by the Chief Coroner for England and Wales, Alexia Durran, happened in the building just behind me in Manchester City's Coroner's Court, and in front of family and friends of the 2 men, Melvin Kravitz and Adrian Dalby. She said that the inquest would look into the who, what and how of their deaths. But we did hear from an officer from Greater Manchester Police today, one of the officers who was part of the emergency response, who detailed the causes of death for both men. Melvin Kravitz, 66, we heard, attended the synagogue that day as a worshipper. He was outside the synagogue when suspected terrorist Jihadi al-Shami drove a black car, a Kia Picanto, into the synagogue gates. It hit a security guard, and at which point he got out of the car holding a knife. The police officer said that CCTV footage then showed him repeatedly stabbing Mr. Kravitz in the upper torso, head and neck area. First aid was administered by volunteer security staff outside the synagogue and then by emergency services, who we know arrived at the scene within minutes of the first 999 call being made. Mr. Kravitz unfortunately died in hospital just a few hours later. We also went on then to hear about Adrian Dalby. Now, we have known previously that he died after being hit by a stray police bullet. We know that firearms officers fired several rounds in order to stop Jihadi al-Shami from carrying out a further knife attack, but in the course of that, Mr. Dalby was hit. We heard that it was a single bullet wound that had penetrated the synagogue door that then hit Mr. Dalby in the chest. At the time, we heard that Mr. Dalby had been holding the synagogue door shut for around 2 minutes in order to stop al-Shami from entering the building. As I said, a relatively short hearing, though, and adjourned here to be reconvened in February next year, where the Chief Coroner said all of those details and more will be scrutinised further.
So to come on the UK tonight, we'll be discussing the study that's found nearly half of young people say their mental health has impacted on their school attendance. And could a world-first breath test help better detect pancreatic cancer? We'll be taking a look a little later in the programme. report from the charity Mind has revealed nearly half of young people say their mental health affects their attendance at school or college. Our education reporter Anjem Pirbakos joins us now for more detail. Anjem, this is an interesting study. Take us through the findings of this, because this particularly relates to the generation affected by the pandemic.
Absolutely. And I think the research here has shown us that the 18 to 21-year-olds were the COVID cohort, and they are still reeling, if you like, from the pandemic and their experience of lockdown. And it doesn't seem to have just snapped back as soon as COVID restrictions were, abandoned. These people are still dealing with those mental health struggles and those challenges, and in every capacity. So we're talking about children who are still at school or college or even at university, but children who are older than that, young people, young adults who are still suffering from the aftermath, if you like, of the pandemic. And I think that we haven't adjusted in the way that we possibly could, and I think the support is really still required. And when I was able to go and see some of the support that was available for young people, there's some amazing work being done, but it needs to be done on a much wider national scale to acknowledge the problems that we're having here. In particular,
we have seen an increase in young people accessing our services since the pandemic. We see young people who can't engage in school, maybe socialising, anxiety, self-harm, suicidal ideation as well has increased at no limits, which is why we're so invested in making sure that an open access hub drop-in is available for all children and young people.
So there's great work being done there at a hub in Southampton, but it's not being replicated across the country. So again, I hate the phrase, but it's postcode lottery for young people.
Definitely. And I think this current system we're in, if a young person is suffering, the normal procedure is that you go to a GP and then you wait for a referral, and that whole process can take anything up to 2 years. And for a young person who's suffering with mental health issues, that time can seem like an age. And really what we want to be able to see is the kind of hub support that we have, where young people can acknowledge that they've got problem and walk in without an appointment and without that referral. And we've spoken to the Department for Education, and they've given us a response, and they've said that they have a plan for change. And a government spokesperson has said, through our plan for change, we're determined to give children the best start in life and to make sure they have a strong foundation for learning by breaking down barriers to attendance. We are expanding access to mental health support teams in all schools and recruiting 8,500 mental health workers, while schools should take a support-first approach for children who are facing barriers to attendance. And we know that the government is taking attendance very seriously, but it's really good to be able to see that they've acknowledged that there is an issue when it comes to mental health amongst young people.
And Andrew, just a question, because your background is in education, you're a teacher. It's a crucial window, isn't it, for young people? And you're talking about a lag in them trying to find support. Time is really of the essence, because it's only that formative window that they have, and it can go on to affect their entire lives, right?
Their entire lives and also their families. I think it's really important to remember that children and young people, what happens to them has a ripple effect on their dynamic of their families. And I spoke to so many parents and carers who are actually just distraught, unable to get the right support for their children when they knew that they were having such a difficult time dealing with their mental health struggles.
OK, Anjem, thank you so much for bringing us the findings of that study. I'm sure we'll talk about this again. Thank you so much. Well, if you've been affected by that story, you can contact the Samaritans. 116 is their number. 116123 is their number. You can contact them at any time, or you can email joe@samaritans.org. Now, a new breath test is being trialled, which could lead to faster diagnosis of pancreatic cancer. The world's first test is going to be trialled on 6,000 people to assess how effectively it identifies the disease, which is notoriously hard to spot. Experts say it could revolutionise care for patients. Well, we can speak now to Professor George Hanna, who is head of the Department of Surgery and Cancer at Imperial College London and involved in this trial, in fact, is the lead researcher of this breath test project. Really good to talk to you tonight about what is a very exciting development. Talk to me about what stage we're at with this breath test project.
We carried out a trial which could differentiate between people with cancer, pancreatic cancer, and people with non-cancer conditions. And the next stage is to try to validate the results of the trial in patients with unknown diagnosis. So we will try the test in 8,000 patients who come through the pathway with suspected cancer, but we don't know the diagnosis, and try to predict and see whether the test can predict accurately whether the people have cancer or not.
Well, this could be an incredible breakthrough in, one of the deadliest and most common forms of cancer, because people notoriously are diagnosed late because the symptoms are hard to spot. And often when people are found to have pancreatic cancer, it's at a late stage, stage 4.
The test would solve a problem for the GPs because the early symptoms of early cancer are non-specific. So the GP cannot refer everybody with non-specific symptoms, otherwise they're overwhelmed with the symptoms, and many patients will have unnecessary investigations. So when the GP waits, because we know that about 80% of people with pancreatic cancer seen the general practitioner about 3 to 4 times before diagnosis. So instead of waiting, they offer the test, and if the test is positive, then they refer for endoscopy or a scan. If the test is negative, then they reassure the patient.
Professor, I'm fascinated to know how the breath test works in terms of what is in the breath. What are the markers in the breath being expelled by a person that tells you whether they have pancreatic cancer?
So the breath carries very rich information because there are molecules in the breath which really we can detect with accurate diagnostic tools, and this provide the signature for the cancer. And this signature we can use to diagnose cancer. You can have different metrics. You can have a blood, but can you have breath? Breath is acceptable, is easy, is simple for patient to do, and I hope the high acceptability will encourage more people to have the test.
Yeah. People are more likely to come forward for tests when they're straightforward and non-invasive, and this is so simple. Talk to me about the rollout of this, because obviously we're still at trial stage, but things are moving very quickly. How quickly do you anticipate this being available to GPs?
So we doing the trial in about, as I mentioned, in 8,000 patients. I think we started the trial. We hopefully will finish in about a couple of years. And if this is proven successful and we can validate the results, then this would be for a rollout in clinical practice.
Yeah, and it seems that the GPs will get the results quickly, because when I was reading about it earlier, it's being likened to a breathalyzer test for alcohol, for example. It's that kind of mechanics, and we just saw it there in some footage. It's important that GPs get results quickly, isn't it, when it comes to diagnosing cancer?
Yeah, it is not as quick as the analyzer because it has to be sent to a lab, but should get in within a couple of days. And actually, in the diagnostic pathway of cancer, then having a couple of days is pretty quick time to get a reasonably accurate diagnosis.
And in terms of the treatment pathway for pancreatic cancer, as I said, most people are diagnosed at stage 4. But if it is caught early, what is the pathway for a patient then?
So currently, 80% of patients are not offered curative treatment because they are too late. So if we can shift this into people with early cancer diagnosis, then more people will be offered curative treatment and potentially more people survive.
Well, it's an incredible breakthrough and research that you're doing. Professor George Hanna, really appreciate you coming on tonight to talk about it. Really exciting development there in cancer diagnosis. That's Professor George Hanna, lead researcher of the Breath Test Project. Still to come on the programme. Why Sir David Attenborough is backing a bid by conservationists to purchase an entire estate in Northumberland, 15 square miles of it. And in the sport, it was heartbreak for England's women as they were knocked out by South Africa at the Cricket World Cup. We discuss where they'll go from here.
I'm Martin Brunt, and I'm Sky's crime correspondent. My most memorable story was, and still is, the disappearance of Madeleine McCann.
Please, please do not hurt her. Please give our little girl back.
It's a case that has shocked, puzzled and divided the public like no other. We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. The story is really one of vast numbers of Unite the Kingdom supporters turning out and taking the police by surprise. I remember the grimmest case, the Soham murders of schoolgirls Holly and Jessica. I felt I can't undo what's happened, but I can help explain it.
Ian Huntley was arrested and charged within a fortnight of the murders.
Jihad al-Shami, the suspected Islamist terrorist who murdered Jews on UK soil. My biggest challenge was to persuade a jailed diamond thief to answer my letters. Martin Brunt, Sky News at the Old Bailey.
Go ahead, back white jacket.
Deborah Haynes from Sky News. He called you Daddy earlier.
No, he did it very affectionately. Daddy, you're my daddy. Thank you.
Leicester is on its knees.
They've ripped the soul out of my factory and there's nothing left.
It is eerily quiet.
It's constantly on the brink of capacity.
There's overcrowding. It's not a new thing.
It's rough.
There's nothing to hide. Why aren't international journalists allowed in?
Are you worried about escalation?
Of course I'm worried about escalation, which is why my focus is on de-escalation.
The region, I think, is on edge because they are anticipating a retaliation.
Iran retaliates for the US attacks.
Founding principle of the alliance, that an attack on one is an attack on all.
Could Putin attack another NATO country within 5 years?
Coming up, why Sir David Attenborough is backing a bid to purchase an estate in Northumberland. But first, Jessica is here with the sport. We're talking about cricket. Yes. Perhaps not in a good way for England's women because they're out of the World Cup. They were facing South Africa and knocked out in the semi-finals today. Can you talk us through it? Can you bear to?
I can. It was a really disappointing performance from this England side. It was a heavy defeat as well, like you say. 125 runs South Africa won by, and it was such a dominating, commanding performance from South Africa. They posted 319 for 7. And get this, for a captain's innings, Laura Voldvert for 169. Look at her smashing the ball out of the ground there. She was absolutely phenomenal today. So they set England this almighty run chase. And usually in these situations where England have their backs to the wall, they rely on their experienced players, their star players, the likes of Amy Jones, Tammy Beaumont, both of those players out for a duck in their innings. And I think this result, SJ, comes as all the more of a surprise because in the group stages, England absolutely dismantled South Africa, bowled them all out for 69. Wasn't to be this time around. So it's South Africa that go through to their first ever World Cup final on Sunday. They'll play India or Australia.
Oh, well, good for them. Let's be sporting about it, shall we? Charlotte Edwards really disappointed after that because, of course, England had gone into this tournament under new leadership. Where do they go from here? That's the big question, isn't it? They'll go into this new ODI cycle, winter's coming, you know, a chance to look at new faces and address what's happened. So what do you think the months ahead are like for them?
Yeah, I think, you know, in the immediate aftermath, they'll be reflective. They'll think about the lessons that they've had to learn from this. You're right, Charlotte Edwards is new in the role. She came in April, and she came in at a time when this England team, who lost their way a bit. They were quite demoralised. They weren't playing very well. She was brought in to turn that around. So when you think about the deep-rooted issues that she had to deal with in just 6 months in the role, it's not that long of a time, is it? And I think the disappointment of this result is compounded by the fact that they had already beaten the South Africa side earlier in the tournament. And South Africa aren't considered a powerhouse of women's cricket, not like India, not like Australia. So she will be disappointed. Let's hear it from the New England head coach, Charlotte Edwards, and see what she had to say as she reflected on this result.
disappointed. I mean, you get to the semi-final stages and you're one step away from being in a World Cup final, and you know, I'm incredibly proud of what the team have achieved over the last few weeks, and not to play our best cricket today is disappointing, and obviously that's something we're going to have to reflect on.
So, what do you think's next?
What is next? I think she will continue to reflect on what's happened. I think she will be looking ahead, because it's only a few months' time now till next summer, and they've got their next major tournament coming up, which is here in England. It's the T20 World Cup, so she'll be relying on some of those players that impressed in this tournament to continue through to the next cycle, I think.
Yeah.
But you're up to date in the cricket now, SJ. Let me bring you the rest of the day's sport.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
Well, Evertonians are getting restless. Their team can't score goals and they need a win. The prospect of another long struggle against relegation is already looming. And Ruud Gullit isn't happy at the way things are mapping out at Newcastle either. They're just as desperate for points. So a real crunch match this.
There was some whisperings in the press, but there was no indication whatsoever of the imminent nature of what was going to happen that night.
It happened very quickly. I think I only got told maybe a couple of days leading up to the Newcastle game that the agent was phoning me saying that the club were looking to sell you. Yeah, it came out the blue really. Something I wasn't looking to do, I wasn't looking to move. I didn't want to move for the club.
We were under pressure from the bank to get the overdraft down. We were playing Newcastle, and the chairman and joint owner were there, and I wasn't there, I wasn't privy. It was news to me when it came through. Newcastle had come in with an £8 million offer, and Peter accepted it.
There were murmurs as the night progressed, and then it sort of reached the crescendo around the...
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Now, Sir David Attenborough has backed a bid by conservationists to purchase an entire Northumberland estate for £30 million. The Wildlife Trust, the Northumberland Wildlife Trust, are looking to buy the entire Rothbury estate, which is surrounded by protected landscapes, nature reserves and wildlife-focused estates. It is the largest area of land to be put on sale in England in a decade. It's an area of land bigger than the city of York. And a video featuring Sir David Attenborough has explained why he is getting involved.
Time is running out to save the historic Rothbury estate. This huge heart-shaped expanse of moorland, rivers, forest and upland in Northumberland needs your help. People know and love the side-by-side hills that rise here. They walk the ridges and listen for the calls of the curlew.
Well, I'm joined now by the Chief Executive of Northumberland Wildlife Trust, Mike Pratt. Mike, good evening to you. You've brought out the big guns to try and get this bid across the line and raise your £30 million. Why is it so important that you get your hands on this estate?
Well, it's probably the biggest opportunity in England, at least, to do something really, really big and connected for nature. Something really which will really contribute to us getting back to around 30% of this land actually being managed really well for nature. And so we've really got to grab it. You know, this is such a fantastic site. It's very special already. It has got loads of wildlife, but it needs to have a lot more. And we're really looking to connect a whole corridor of land between the coast and right up to the Scottish border. So, you know, this is a fantastic opportunity. And obviously David Attenborough, who's seen everything really, can actually see the real potential of what we're trying to do here. And he knows just how important it is, because actually we've lost so much everywhere. And I think this part of Northumberland, we've really got the opportunity to really bring nature back at a massive connected scale. And that's it's the size of Athens, this place. So it's not a small place. Yeah.
Yeah, 15 square miles. If you operate in acres, it's 9,486 acres. When you talk about the restoration of nature in the UK, you mentioned that £30 there, that 30% target. That's a UN global initiative, isn't it? And the UK wants to have 30% of natural land in the UK. Currently, we're at about 7%, I understand.
That's right.
Is that right?
That's right, yeah. No more than that, even in a place like Northumberland, which feels pretty wild. And when you're on that ridge, it is quite wild. But, you know, we have lost a lot of wildlife even in that landscape. It hasn't been managed. It's been managed very well and sensitively for years, but it hasn't been managed really with nature in the middle. And we want to sort of have a nature-led approach here. But actually, it's not just that. We've got a scale here where we can work connected to other estates as well, where we can actually really bring in what we think is really something unique, what we call the 4 pillars, really, of restoration of nature. And we will look at getting nature to show us the way and maybe actually rewild some small areas, but we want to re-wet the bogs, you know, have more broadleaf woodland, all that. We might bring in some large herbivores, more cattle, maybe less sheep to really graze the areas in different ways. So we've got a mosaic of habitats more than we have at the moment. But we have got a lot. It's a great starting point because it has been managed well in the past, and we just want to build on that into the future. But there's so much that could be achieved here.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big project to take on. You've got some big plans for it, like you said, rewilding, sustainable farming, because there is some farming on that land, which, you know, you want to keep it in some respect, but make it respectful of the natural environment and sustainable. £30 million is a lot of money, though. Where are you with the fundraising? Because I was looking at your fundraising page and you've had donations anywhere from £5 up to £5 million. But what target? Well, we know the target, but where are you at with that? And what are you planning to do? Because you've only got a year to get there now.
Yeah, we've actually raised around 30% of that. This 30 figure keeps coming up. But yeah, we're getting there towards a third of the value. I'll have to say that overnight, really, because of the Attenborough effect, we've actually brought in hundreds of thousands just in the last few hours today, which is incredible. And it just shows how many people are really behind this initiative. And you're quite right, it isn't just about nature, it's very much about people. And it's people in terms of farming and bringing the farmers who know that land so well to bear on the nature element. And we do want to have regenerative and sensitive farming with nature. We really want the sweet spot. We want really nature and farming to really thrive side by side. And we mustn't forget, this is a people landscape. People have been interacting with this landscape for 6,000 years. And, people love it. And we want to make sure that we actually do something with the local economy as well. Because every rural area like this really does need, a bit of an injection. And we'll do that through nature tourism and good farming practice, which feeds into that local economy, a nature economy, if you like. And so, yeah, I think it's lots of people will benefit in all sorts of ways. And at the centre of it, nature also will benefit and come back. And that's why Attenborough, of course, is behind it, because he can see what an amazing opportunity of scale this really is.
Oh, well, listen, good luck with it. Like you said, Sir David Attenborough is the boost that your fundraising needs. And Mike Pratt there from Northumberland Wildlife Trust. Really appreciate your time tonight and good luck with your endeavour.
Thank you very much.
Time now for a quick look at the weather. The rest of the week is looking fairly mild but unsettled, with heavy rain and strong winds likely tomorrow and into Friday. Before then, southern parts mostly fine this evening, although western coastal areas will see some blustery showers. The north, meanwhile, more widespread and locally heavy showers concentrated over northern England. The showers will mostly fade later tonight, leaving it mainly dry, clear and calm. There'll be a widespread frost and some patchy fog developing, but Cork and Kerry are going to turn wet and windy later. Ireland and Northern Ireland will see rain and strong winds moving in tomorrow morning. You can expect 50-mile-an-hour gusts inland and severe coastal gales. Britain, meanwhile, looks mostly dry and sunny. That's all from the UK tonight. The highlights are on our webpage, skynews.com for that. Up next is The World with Barbara Sarah. We'll see you tomorrow at 8.